For 2 decades, if you said SpaceX, you thought Mars. The two were just inseparable. But then, almost out of nowhere, they slammed on the brakes, pulled a hard left turn, and suddenly it's all about the moon. So what on earth is going on? Let's get into it. And get this, the news didn't drop in some stuffy press release. Nope, it came from a direct post by Elon Musk himself. He just casually announced this massive bombshell, a self-growing city on the moon. And he thinks it can happen in under 10 years. That's more than twice as fast as the Mars plan. And you gotta pay attention to the wording he uses here. He doesn't say we're gonna shift focus. He says the pivot has already happened. It's a done deal. Right? You're probably thinking the same thing I was. Wait a second. Wasn't Mars the entire point? And that's the central mystery we're going to unpack here. How does a company that has been so laser-focused on one single goal for 20 years just change course like this? To really appreciate how big of a deal this is, we need to rewind a bit. You have to understand, for SpaceX, Mars wasn't just some goal on a whiteboard. It was the entire reason the company even exists. The founding mission from day one was to make humanity a multiplanetary species, and Mars was always the destination, non-negotiable. And this timeline, it really tells the story. It starts way back in 2001 with this kind of wild idea to put a little greenhouse on Mars. Then it evolves into this incredibly detailed plan for a city of 80,000 people. And then you see the hardware start to take shape, the interplanetary transport system, which eventually became the Starship we see testing today. Every single step, every engineering decision was pointed directly at the red planet. The entire company was rowing in the exact same direction. Okay, and this is where you get whiplash, because just a year or two before this huge announcement, Musk was publicly calling the moon a distraction. He literally said SpaceX would go straight to Mars. So what we're talking about here isn't just a minor change in plans, it's a complete 180-degree reversal of a core philosophy. What in the world could be big enough to force a shift that dramatic? All right, so let's start peeling back the layers here, starting with the official reason Musk gave. And honestly, when you just break down the logistics, the argument for picking the moon first is, well, it's surprisingly simple. I mean, this table says it all, doesn't it? A trip to the moon takes a few days. A trip to Mars takes 6 to 9 months. And launch opportunities, you can pretty much head to the moon whenever you want, roughly every 10 days. For Mars, you have to wait over 2 years for the planets to align just right. It's the difference between a weekend getaway and a multi-year expedition. The accessibility isn't even in the same league. And that is the real game changer. Think about it. With such short round trips, you create this incredible, rapid feedback loop. If a piece of equipment breaks or a system has a bug, you don't have to wait 2 years for the next launch window to send a fix. You can send it next week. You can build your base piece by piece, mission by mission, learning and improving as you go. It just completely changes the speed at which you can develop everything. This is also key to understanding that self-growing city phrase. The idea isn't to haul every single nut and bolt from Earth. The plan relies completely on something called ISRU. That's in situ resource utilization. It's a fancy term for simply living off the land. You know, using lunar dust to 3D print habitats, mining water ice from shadowed craters to make rocket fuel, breathable air, and drinking water. That's the secret sauce for turning a small outpost into a truly self-sustaining city. But is that practical advantage the whole story? Of course not. The official reason makes a ton of sense, but it's pretty clear there are much deeper, more strategic things at play here. This pivot seems to be part of a much bigger picture that involves technological hurdles, intense competition, and a really surprising connection to AI. So first off, let's just be realistic. Building a giant spaceship is incredibly hard. And while Starship has made amazing progress, it's also had some very public setbacks. The big one is on-orbit refueling, the technology to top off the fuel tanks in space, which is absolutely essential for a Mars mission. It's never been done at this scale and is still pretty much unproven. All of these delays are putting SpaceX's critical NASA contract for the Artemis moon landing at risk. So much so that NASA has actually started looking for other options, just in case. And speaking of other options, SpaceX is no longer the only game in town, not by a long shot. Jeff Bezos' company, Blue Origin, is now a serious contender, having already won huge NASA contracts for later moon missions. And even in the satellite launch business, SpaceX's bread and butter, new rockets from companies like Blue Origin and Rocket Lab are starting to chip away at their market dominance. The pressure is definitely on. But this might be the biggest reason of all. Just before the moon announcement, SpaceX merged with xAI, Musk's artificial intelligence company. And the new grand plan is just mind-blowing. They want to build a constellation of up to 1 million satellites. But these aren't for internet service. They're orbital data centers, soaking up constant solar power to run massive AI computations. And the moon's role in all this? It becomes the factory. A lunar base would mine materials to build more of these AI satellites and launch them from outside Earth's deep gravity well, making it way cheaper and more efficient. It's a breathtakingly ambitious plan that completely reframes the entire purpose of going to space. So what does this all add up to? Because this isn't just about one company's corporate strategy. A pivot this big could fundamentally reshape our entire future in space. For NASA, this is actually a huge validation of their long-held Moon to Mars strategy. And for the rest of us, well, it could accelerate a future with abundant clean energy and a permanent human presence off-world. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. The challenges that remain are immense. We still have to solve the dangers of deep space radiation, the long-term health effects of low gravity, and not to mention all the massive ethical questions that come with commercializing the moon. Which brings us to the ultimate question. Is this pivot just a pragmatic delay, a necessary first step on the long road to Mars, or, with the immense economic and strategic power of a lunar-based AI infrastructure, has the moon just become the final destination itself? Only time will tell.